So for our first walkthrough, I thought a place for us to start would be Adobe Firefly. If you've never done any generative image making before, I actually think Firefly is probably one of the best places to start because the UI is really like entry level friendly. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. I mean that literally I think the interface is quite good for what it does. And it does sort of help guide you to learn how to do good prompt engineering with generative imagery. So if you go to firefly.adobe.com, you will see Adobe has a number of different generative tools now. They did Firefly. I think right after that they did generative fill. Now they've got this text effects thing, which I think is pretty interesting. They've got some stuff built into Illustrator to allow you to recolor images, as well as to create vector graphics using text generation as well, or sorry, text to vector. And there's even these templates that look like they might be in Adobe Express, which is interesting as well. So Adobe's definitely making moves and trying to do a lot of stuff. For this video, I just want to focus on Firefly because all the other tools either require you to have an image already or to use other tooling. So for this, let's just focus on Firefly. To get to that one, you will get this here. You'll go to text to image. You'll hit generate. It's going to take you to this other screen, which I kind of find annoying. I should put me right into Firefly. The other thing I should mention before we get started is you do need a Adobe account. I believe you need to have maybe paying for Creative Suite or something. I do pay for Creative Suite, so I'm not sure what the pricing is. There's also a new pricing model that I think they just recently announced, which is Firefly or something. If you click this here, you'll see what it is. Yeah, it looks like they do offer this Adobe Firefly plan, which is $5 a month. Looks like it gives you more generative credits a month. I don't know what I currently get. I have no idea. I've yet to hit my credit limit. There's also no watermarking, and they give you a bunch of storage as well. So if you want to just do this, I think maybe you could just do Firefly by itself. But anyway, personally, I don't use Firefly a lot because I don't necessarily think the models are that good. We'll get to that when we actually look at generating images. But I do think it's a nice place to start. So if you do find yourself using it a lot, then maybe paying $5 a month is worth it. Maybe removing watermarking is worth it. I could certainly see that being the case. So once you're on this page, you can come in here and just click generate. So I'm going to use one of the prompts I've been using a lot for this series, which is dog riding a beautiful dolphin. This one's always fun to use because the model actually has a lot of trouble generating two different animals often, and the idea of riding a dolphin is that the dog needs to be on top, which doesn't always happen. So this is a good prompt just to sort of kick the tires and try stuff out. So let's go ahead and hit generate. I don't know why it does this because then it kicks you into Firefly 2. And actually it looks like I'm out of credits. So I guess I'll be going ahead and spending $5 a month for this plan. I feel like I only used maybe 25 credits or 25 images recently. So apparently the amount of images you get to make with this are pretty low. So I'll be back once I've gone ahead and paid for this plan. All right, and I guess I'm now paying $50 for the rest of this year to use Firefly. So let's get our use out of it. Yeah, that was kind of annoying. I wish it were more upfront about how many credits it took. This seems to be true of pretty much every generative model I use these days, is they're never clear about the credits and then you end up paying a lot as soon as you use it more than a couple times. So anyway, that's annoying, but let's get into playing with actual Firefly model. Of course, it now kicked me back to this page. So let's say dog riding. Oh man. Okay. Sometimes just the basics are the hardest part. Okay, now we're into Firefly. This is the interface that I find actually pretty helpful. So let's go ahead and get started with this. It's obviously already generating some images for me. But let's talk a little about what's going on the right-hand side here. So while this generates some images for me, we can talk about a little bit about what is available to us here. So first off, there's a model version. Here's our dog riding dolphins. Firefly 2 is the newest version. There is also an original version that was Firefly 1. I don't really necessarily see a reason to use Firefly 1 at this point. Everything I've seen says that Firefly 2 is pretty good, so we'll go ahead and just use that. Now, we also have the option for content type, right? Do we want an illustration or do we want a photo? Firefly is, I believe, trained on pretty much mostly Adobe stock imagery, which means they do separate out between photo and artistic, and I think that's actually kind of good. I think knowing that I want either a illustration or a photo is kind of a good starting point. So you can begin to pick from between these two. And you can also crank up the intensity of this description, right? So if I want something really photo, and I can crank this up to a lot to get that like very strong photo realism look. So if we go ahead and hit generate, I should get a very realistic photo of a dog riding a dolphin. The downside of this is that there are not many photos that actually can achieve this, right? Because we don't really see a lot of dogs riding dolphins. So I'm not sure our results are going to be that good here, but let's try it and see. I think we're going to get better results from the illustration model because I am guessing that the illustration model that was trained on has some more fantasy, unrealistic images, meaning it might be easier for this model to make a dog riding a dolphin. Actually, you know what? Not too bad. Like, there's some good ones here. That's clearly more of a whale than a dolphin, but I'll let it pass. I like this one where, you know, it's got a little bit of a wide angle sort of look and you get a big dog face right in the middle. So, okay, this worked pretty well. If I crank my visual intensity down, I might not get something as photorealistic. Let's see. So already, if you've played with other generative models, you will see that like the sort of settings or what's available to you are much more front and center here. And this is what I actually really like about Firefly. If I were to be designing for someone who I didn't think knew about, you know, generative models or text prompting, I would definitely lean toward these tools. Now, imagine what's really happening here under the hood is actually like all it's doing is applying these as part of the text prompt and then maybe doing some weighting in order to, you know, crank up some of the photorealistic qualities or the artistic qualities. I would be surprised if they're doing more than just turning this into the prompt, but it's interesting to sort of look at. So let's move on past this section. I skipped over the aspect ratio. If you want something like landscape, portrait, or widescreen, you can get that as well. Probably working in square is the easiest if you just want to start and generate some images, but it's nice that there are other options available to you. Not every model has that capability. I think, you know, only Midjourney and maybe a couple other things actually allow you to have different aspect ratios. This is where I think it's really interesting and you can learn a lot about how these models work is by going through the style section here. So we'll come back to the reference images in just a minute. But actually, let's start with effects. I think effects are the thing that everyone sort of starts using when they do prompt engineering, is they kind of learn that, like, you know, certain words create certain looks and feels. And what I've liked like here is that they've actually sort of brought that front and center and really made that a part of this experience. So if you want to pick an effect, you certainly can by picking these. And they've got sort of some really popular ones here. You can pick by artistic movement. So let's go for someone that's like maybe like cubist, or maybe, yeah, let's start with cubist. The other thing I would say is if you're going to pick these, you might also want to go back and select art here. So leave this at cubist and art. Let's see what else is here. Maybe some effects. Can maybe do an isometric view that might kind of play with the cubism. As you begin to play with this, I would also recommend that you kind of, like, you really do play. Learn that maybe certain styles go well together, and maybe you even try some really opposing and contrasting styles and see what happens there. I personally tend to like gravitate towards stuff that feels similar, so isometric and cubism kind of go hand in hand. There are some materials here as well, so maybe we want something that's a little more 3D. And then there's concepts as well. So beautiful, bohemian, chaotic, eclectic, futuristic. Let's go futuristic. I feel like all of these are kind of playing hand in hand. Down here, there's also a thing around color and tone. Like, what sort of color do you want to apply to your image? Let's go vibrant. What sort of lighting do you want? I think we can do something like dramatic lighting. And then let's also look at composition. This is actually like getting pretty complex. Like, you could probably put this in a prompt in Midjourney or DALL-E, and it might not really pick up on all these things. So it's kind of worth playing around and just sort of seeing what you get here. Let's just go, I don't know. Let's just say none and leave it at that. So let's go ahead and generate this now and just see what we get. And if you've heard me talk about this before, you know that I'm like not the biggest fan of prompt engineering, because I do in fact think that UIs can manage a lot more than a text prompt can. And I think this is a great example of this. Like, this is a great example of, you know, using these sort of stylistic cues to essentially what I imagine is doing is creating a text prompt for it to feed to the image. But you do get something that's really interesting, and you don't have to just learn all the special keywords to do prompt engineering. Our images are looking pretty good here. This is like a dog-human hybrid riding a dog dolphin. I don't really know. Some of these are kind of weird. This one's actually like most like what I would expect. Not necessarily cubist, but that's okay. Like, I think maybe these other words are kind of overpowering the cubism thing. What I do like about this is there's also an option here to create variations based on this. So for example, I could generate a similar set of images. I could use this as style reference. Again, we'll come back to style reference in just a minute. And then you can do stuff in Adobe Express with this. But for now, let's just generate similar images. Let's see how similar our images are when we generate these. So here we go. So this generated some additional images. I gotta say, this one is still the best. This one's pretty bad. This one is definitely not riding a, well, this is still a whale. This isn't really a dolphin. My guess is what they're doing here is they're not regenerating images based on the prompt. They're actually doing something where they're taking this image and generating images in a similar latent space to this. So you do get images that are still dogs on shapes that look like rocks or maybe dolphin-like shapes, but it's not the exact same. So again, I would probably say this is still my favorite. But let's take a look at some other ways to do this. Let's sort of like maybe clear and restart. The downside of this is there's really no way to restart all of this. Like, I wish there were like a clear all button where I could sort of restart back from the beginning. But let's maybe just maybe refresh the page and see if that clears everything. Now, of course, we're back to this page where we have to start this prompt. So let's just say dog, and let's just say generate. Cool. And here's a really interesting thing. I actually haven't seen this yet, is it does begin to tell me if my prompt is too short. So here it said, hey, that prompt is too short. You probably need to make it longer. That message disappeared very quickly. I wasn't even able to read all of it. But this is enough. This is kind of what I wanted to start with, is just like go back to the beginning. I like that if you prompt with a dog, you also get a cat with this. That's kind of interesting. Let's actually talk about one of the features here that is sort of buried in the menu while we're looking at this image. Let's say I want to remove the cat. So in the advanced settings here, there is a section called exclude from image. And I can put in here, I can say cat. Now, this is essentially negative prompting. They haven't called it negative prompting. They're calling it exclude, which I think is actually probably correct. Again, I don't think that everyone needs to know exactly how prompting works or whatever. So just saying try to exclude a cat from this image. So if we add this, we hit return, that adds an excluded word section here. Let's try to generate this, and maybe I'll get my error message about the prompt being too short again, and we'll see what I can do to fix that. Okay, well, that didn't work. I wonder why that is. Maybe because my prompt is too short. Let's use this as an opportunity then to look at suggestions. So this button here will turn on and off suggestions. Now, suggestions are basically a way for the model to begin to tell you additional words and additional ideas to include in your phrasing, your prompt, to maybe generate better images. So let's try this again. Let's go painting of a dog riding a dolphin. And here we go. So you'll see it is creating new prompts for me. So it says, maybe with mountains in the background. So let's try that. And let's do comma. And then you'll see there's some other stuff here. So concept for artistic literature illustration, an oil painting Cypriot cat, an image for her postcard. So this might be feeding this to, say, a language model, and the language model is coming back with additional concepts and ideas here. White hair and blue eyes, that's a little weird. So let's say which outlined by summer clouds. This seems very weird. And then let's lastly do and sunlight in full color. Cool. So that has given me my entire prompt. Again, I like this. I like that it's giving me ideas and things to experiment with. Let's lastly go back up to and look at our reference image gallery. So when I was describing how diffusion models work, I was mentioning there's also a thing called image prompting. That is different from image initialization. What this will allow me to do is actually feed an image into the model and say, kind of apply the similar styles to this. So let's take a look at what's available in the reference gallery they have here. So here again, they kind of show some popular ones. They maybe show you some styles that you can apply here. Let's take a look at what we got in maybe the neon section. Let's see, or maybe landscapes. Yeah, you know what? Let's look at landscapes. Let's try to generate a nice image like this with this kind of background. So let's go ahead and click on this, and you'll see the style reference is then applied over here. So we're kind of applying both the prompt as well as an image prompt or a style reference to generate an image that looks something like this. So let's go ahead and hit generate and see what happens. And hopefully this time my excluded word of the cat, it will be removed, but let's see. And sure enough, we now have our dog, or I don't know that's a dog. That's a dog with like a hat on it. This one's pretty good. I like this image. Again, I like that we get more of the dog's front of the face. Again, still dealing with some whales here. Maybe this model is not the best. Let's actually do this. Let's remove whales from our image. And let's regenerate. I want to see if I can dial in that dolphin. And instead, I do not get a dolphin at all. I get a boat. I get, a horse. So apparently that didn't work. So let's keep our whales in there. This is kind of one of the problems of these models, is that maybe particularly Adobe Firefly's model sort of conflates whales and dolphins together, or maybe it doesn't have enough data with dolphins in it, so it kind of generates a whale that looks similar. This is kind of why I say, like, I don't like Firefly as a model. You could argue it's probably more ethical because they are pulling directly from their own company's stock photography setup. I've heard that the artists who are on Adobe stock are not happy about this, but I think it also probably implies a limit of data. If they were to say go out and maybe pull from other places, they might have a better sense of what a dolphin is. They might have a better sense of other data sets, or they might just have a broader range of particular styles. So this is kind of why I generally don't use Firefly much personally, although I do actually quite like this interface, and I wish there were more of this for other models that I do like. One last thing I want to do is I want to remove the style reference, and I want to actually upload my own, because as you saw in one of my demos, I'm really liking this sort of Lisa Frank looking image. Let's see, where did this go? It's this one. It's one of Lisa Frank's images, so let's go ahead and add this in. And I do not have rights to this. Good luck trying to catch me on that, though. I like that they at least mention it. They're like, hey, you probably should have... it said it was checking content right images, and it still uploaded it. So good try, guys. But clearly you need to do a lot more work there. So let's go ahead and just generate this. Let me add a couple other things in my effects here, just to maybe get something similar. So let's do... I don't know, let's try eclectic. And let's see if there's any materials here or effects here that we can add that might be kind of good. Let's do color explosion. And let's do themes. And let's look for... let's do psychedelic. Okay, so now we've got a couple themes applied here, a couple styles applied here. We've got a reference image, and we're going to now generate this. Here we go. So again, some interesting images here. I do have a dog riding a whale and another dog, and I've got some humans. So it's still struggling with this. So let's actually go and let's remove, let's say, human, or let's say person. And we'll try to remove some of these using excluded words. All right, and now we've got at least a couple dogs here. No dogs in this image, but that's got a nice volcano in the background. I do kind of like this one, so maybe we would work off this one. Between these two, I kind of like these two. Let's see if I can get more results from this one. So generate similar. You'll notice that it cleared my style reference, which means I think this might be getting fed back into as the style reference. Okay, well, I gotta say, I still like this one the most. So maybe I'll just work off this one. So I'll go ahead and hit download and save that. So this pretty much covers what I wanted to cover for Firefly. Again, I think you can kind of see that like there's some really interesting ideas here, especially from a UI perspective. And while the model isn't my favorite, I do think that you could do a lot with this. And I will say, honestly, if you've never used, maybe you've never used, if you've used, I mean, I would say Midjourney is probably like the most comparative example here of like getting high quality images and immediately. If you've used open source models like Stable Diffusion or maybe even DALL-E, your first couple examples might not generate as nice looking images as this, and that might lead to some frustration. So I actually think like Firefly as sort of an intro tool for people just getting started, I think you get high quality results and you at least understand a little bit how these models work. And then maybe you move on to other tools once you sort of expand beyond this as sort of your model that you can use. Yeah, so that covers everything I want to cover with Firefly. At this point, we'll move on to some other models and check those out. But I think keep this UI in memory as you look at other tools, because I still think this is probably one of the best UIs that I've seen in a while for generative image making.